السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، نحمده ونسبحه ونقدسه على آلائه ونعمائه، ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، إلها واحدا أحدا فردا صمدا حيا قيوما، نؤمن له بالربوبية ونقر له بالعبودية، من يهد الله فهو المهتدي ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا، ونشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره المشركون. اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك وترحم على محمد وآل محمد كما صليت وسلمت وباركت وترحمت على إبراهيم وآل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. وصل اللهم وسلم على جميع الأنبياء والمرسلين والشهداء والصالحين وعترة نبيك الطاهرين. عباد الله، أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله عز وجل. قال تعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال رب اغفر لي وهب لي ملكا لا ينبغي لأحد من بعدي إنك أنت الوهاب. صدق الله العلي العظيم. وصلوا على محمد وآل محمد. A common thread that exists between the prophets who are mentioned in the Quran that were given rule over kingdoms were two elements. One is that they were given knowledge, ilm, and the other is that they were given hukm, which is judgment and discernment, one of the qualities of hikmah, which is wisdom. So for instance, if you look at the example of the prophets Dawood and Sulaiman, father and son, both of whom were rulers over nations, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes them in the following way. He says, وَكُلًّا آتَيْنَا حُكْمًا وَعِلْمًا. Both of them, not only did we give them knowledge, which granted them their competence to rule, but they were also granted hukum, which is the ability for judgment and the ability for discernment. Likewise is the case with the Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam. Allah describes him in the following way. He says, وَلَمَّا بَلَغَ أَشُدَّهُ آتَيْنَاهُ حُكْمًا وَعِلْمًا. That when he reached the age of maturity, a sign of his maturity was not only that he had knowledge, meaning that he had competence, but he also had hukum, which is discernment, judgment, which are characteristics of wisdom. And so when you think about competency, the idea of competency and being able to deliver, see, in knowledge theory, there is an idea which is referred to as the DIKW pyramid. And what that refers to are different levels of understanding. So DIKW is an acronym for data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. And at the bottom of that pyramid is data. See, when it comes to your decision-making process, what is it that you need? Is it just that you need data and information in order to be competent in something? Or is it that you need knowledge and wisdom? They're not the same thing. Having wisdom is not just having data on your side, or knowledge, or information. Having wisdom is the highest level of understanding. The lowest level of understanding is simply having data, and the next level after that is information. So think about your decision-making process when you want to undertake a project. Data is the lowest form of understanding, and data refers to statistics, things which can be measured. And so, when you think about, for instance, I'll give you an example. If you are to limit your decision-making process based off of data and not off of knowledge or wisdom, well, sometimes you end up severely limiting yourself. I'll give you a prime example of that. Motivational psychologists, they give the example of an athlete who competed in the 1950s Olympics. His name was Roger Bannister. Maybe you've heard his name. He was a British athlete. And Roger Bannister was the first person to run a mile in under 4 minutes. Now, up until that time, it was not only considered not probable, it was considered impossible. So scientists had collected a lot of data, and they had looked at the fibers in the muscles, and they had certain measurements and certain statistics, and based off of that data and based off of that information, which is a very low level of understanding, they had deemed it impossible for any human being, no matter how strong they were, no matter how competent, to run a mile in less than 4 minutes. Now, if Roger Bannister was to say that, well, based off of the data, based off of the information that's gathered by the so-called experts, I'm not going to attempt it at all. But he didn't allow that low level of understanding to affect his decision-making process. So what did he do? He trained himself. He tried. He attempted time after time again. And finally, he was the first person to run a mile in less than 4 minutes. And after he broke that barrier, thousands of people were able to break the same barrier, which is to run a mile in less than 4 minutes. So when you tend to think of what is possible or what is not possible, motivational psychologists, they say that don't base your decision-making process only off of data and information. Sometimes you need a higher level of understanding which comes through knowledge and wisdom. You know, a few months ago, I think I spoke about the whole idea of the reality distortion field. How one of the things that they credit Steve Jobs with as a communicator and as a leader is that he would walk up to his teams and they would be on a deadline and they would be crunched, and based off of the data and information that they had, they wouldn't believe that it was possible to complete a task. But because he had such a high level of belief, it rubbed off onto his people. And so he was able to lead people into finishing projects on time by the sheer amount of belief that he had. That required knowledge and it required wisdom, meaning it required higher levels of understanding. So, first you have data, which refers to facts and statistics. The second level in the DIKW pyramid is information. So information is when you are able to give data context. You've heard the word text and context. Text refers to the word, the phrase itself, the text itself. Context refers to the situation which surrounds the text, which gives it meaning. And there are many, many examples of this. I mean, you can pick out a single word or a single phrase in the Arabic language, or say from the Quran or from the Hadith. In and of itself, it might not have a meaning. But once you place it within a specific verse or a specific group of verses, you have now given it context. Thus, you have added to it meaning. So this is information. Beyond information, you have knowledge. And knowledge refers to a synthesis of multiple sources of information. And that's what we refer to in the Arabic language as ilm. When we say ilm, this is knowledge. This is a synthesis of multiple sources of information. So when the Quran says that we gave the prophets Dawood and Sulaiman and Yusuf and other prophets, when we gave them ilm, we gave them a synthesis of multiple sources of information. You begin to connect the dots, how this piece of information is related to that piece of information. وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that when He created Adam, He endowed him, He taught him, He gave him not just data, not just statistics, not just information, but He endowed him with knowledge. Meaning that He endowed him with the ability to connect these pieces of information together and to begin to develop a higher level of understanding. Beyond knowledge and the highest level of understanding is called hikmah. And the word hukum, judgment or discernment, is related to hikmah. It is having wisdom. Wisdom is the highest level of understanding that we can achieve. And wisdom takes knowledge, ilm, to a higher level. It's knowing not just the how and the what, but knowing the why. Developing an appreciation for something. Knowing the difference between right and wrong. Knowing the difference between ethical and non-ethical. And that's what separates true ma'rifah, understanding, from just having knowledge. You know, you look at the world today, there's no lack of data, there's no lack of information, and there's no lack of knowledge. What there is a lack of is applied knowledge, which is wisdom. And wisdom is discernment between right and wrong. Wisdom is discernment between ethical and non-ethical. So you have leaders who are knowledgeable in the fields of business and politics and law and medicine, but what happens when you are equipped with knowledge, but there is no wisdom behind it? What to do with that knowledge? You have disasters, and this is why we have disasters in the medical field sometimes, or in the political field, or in the business field. It's because you have people who have knowledge, but there is no wisdom behind it. There is no virtue, there is no right and wrong. So in chapter number 38, verse 35, Sulaiman has a request from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, قَالَ رَبِّ اغْفِرْ لِي. Oh Allah, forgive me. Because in the verses that precede, it is suggested that Sulaiman was so enchanted with some of the worldly things that God had granted him that he had forgotten his prescribed time of prayer. So he asked God to return the sun from the sunset, to bring daylight back so that he can give his prayers. So to follow up with that, he says, قَالَ رَبِّ اغْفِرْ لِي. Oh Allah, forgive me. وَهَبْ لِي مُلْكًا لَا يَنْبَغِي لِأَحَدٍ مِّن بَعْدِي. And grant for me, moving forward, a type of kingdom, a type of dominion that you shall not grant to anyone after me. Now, some people take this, some commentators, they take this in the literal sense. They say that because, he was afflicted with an illness that made him so sick that he thought that he was going to lose his rule over the kingdom, he asked God to grant him life, better life, so that he can continue to rule. Some commentators, they take a more metaphysical meaning. And they said that, no, it wasn't that he asked God for more life. What he was asking God at this moment was inner mastery and wisdom. That in the same way that he had given him external strength, external power, he asked God to give him internal power. What in today's world they refer to as mastery, which is mastery of the internal world. Mastery of the self. And that is wisdom. That is the height of true understanding. The reason I bring this up is because I believe that we live in a world where data and information and even knowledge is at our fingertips. There's no abundance. You go to how-to videos, and there's a how-to video for everything. They're saying that YouTube is now being used as a platform in the same way that Google was used many years ago, as a search engine. So instead of people going to Google first, they go to YouTube first because they know that there's an abundance of information videos, of how-to videos. So there is an abundance of information, but what people are truly searching for is wisdom, not just information. People are searching for applied knowledge. People are searching for the truth. And especially you find this and you feel this during times of turmoil and instability and uncertainty. That people want true wisdom in their life, not just the noise and the information that exists out there. Because guidance does not come through the mere transference of data and knowledge. It comes through the transference of wisdom from one generation to another. You see, if you look at the history of the United States and other countries as well, but specifically in the United States, if you go back way before the Industrial Revolution, pre-1750, there was a time where wisdom, and we're talking about the high levels of understanding here, knowledge and wisdom, not just data and information, but knowledge and wisdom, the way that they were imparted from one generation to another was by the method of apprenticeship and mentorship. What does that mean? Before the modern day schooling system, before the modern day working system, sons would work by their fathers. Daughters would work by their mothers. The amount of influence that was available from father to son, from mother to daughter, from mother to son, from father to daughter, was at a maximum. Why? By virtue of time and by virtue of distance. Then the Industrial Revolution happened. Fathers and mothers were taken to factories. Children were taken to schools. So the primary influencer in the life of the child became the teacher, not the parent anymore. So management in the workplace replaced mentorship, and teachers in the school system replaced apprenticeship. Now we are living in an age where we're beyond the industrial age. We no longer live in the industrial age. We live in what people call the information age. So there's this idea that when it comes to wisdom, when it comes to guidance, you can do it on your own, right? You can go to YouTube and you can learn how to change a tire. Or even if you want to learn, certain ideas, certain principles. If you want to learn about, for instance, the ins and outs of economics and finance, well, you could just type it in, go into, Khan Academy or any one of the modern platforms that are available, and you can get an entire course for free, almost equivalent to what you would receive at a university level education. So now, in the minds of people, you have a different paradigm. Now, people are searching for wisdom, they are searching for knowledge, but because they have now moved away from the old model of teaching, now people are in search for it, but they're not able to find it anymore. And the way that we learn wisdom, the way that wisdom is imparted upon us, is not by YouTube. It's not by Khan Academy. There's only so much. Those are great platforms for education and for research, but there's only so much that you can get out of it. In order to receive wisdom, you need a leader in your life. You need a person in your life. Wisdom is developed by virtue of relationships with people who have achieved, who have applied knowledge. And there's no other way that wisdom is imparted from one generation to another generation. See, there's the quintessential example of that in the Quran. Musa was a man of knowledge. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes him as the Kalim, right? The one who basically had direct contact with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I mean, in terms of understanding, he had the plug, he had the connection, right? So, even with that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches him a very important lesson. That in order to gain wisdom, which is the highest level of understanding, you, O Musa, you need a teacher. You need a guide. You need an expert. You need someone who's just one level above you, just one notch above you. And so he introduces him to Khidr, Nabiullah Khidr. And he goes on the journey with him. And Khidr warns him. He says, look, you're going to see things that might not make sense to you right away. And I'm just warning you from now. And what I expect from you is complete submission. No ifs, ands, or buts. So he says, okay, I'm up for the task. He accompanies him on the journey. Long story short, Khidr does the three things. He punches the hole in the boat and he builds the wall and he kills the young man. And Musa considers himself a knowledgeable, logical person. He's seeing these events unfold in front of him, but he's still not understanding what's happening. And the reason he could not understand it is because he did not have wisdom and insight at the level that Khidr did. And that's how God taught him the lesson. And in the end, it was just too much for him. And so Khidr tells Musa, هَذَا فِرَاقٌ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنِكَ. See, sometimes we're going to come across people that are much wiser than us. They have much more insight. But we walk away from them not because of their inadequacies, but because of our own inadequacies. So many times, you learn a lesson in your life, something happens in your life, and you don't realize the wisdom behind that lesson until maybe 10 years later, or 15 years later, or sometimes even 30 years later. That's what's so special about hikmah. That's what's so special about wisdom. And the way that it is imparted is from one generation to another generation. Now, I'll just mention this and I'll end with this. Why is it important to have people in our life who actually have applied knowledge, meaning wisdom that they can impart upon us? See, sometimes, we live in an age where people consider themselves, I can become self-made, right? And sometimes young people, they see a guy like Mark Zuckerberg who dropped out of school and was able to start his own company and become a multi-billionaire. Or, many of these examples that exist, that are in the limelight today in technology and in Hollywood, who didn't go to school, they didn't get an academic education, but they were still able to become successful. So if you're young in here, you might want to make that choice. And I'm not telling you what to do or what not to do, but not needing a formal education from school does not mean that you still do not need guidance and wisdom from someone who is beyond your years. Don't equate those two things. That's a very big mistake. And so sometimes people think that not going to school or being a dropout and taking that self-made route means that I don't need to listen to anybody. I don't need to take advice from anybody. Nobody has any wisdom to offer me because I have all the wisdom that I need at my fingertips. And that's a grave mistake. See, in relationships, there are 3 levels of maturity. And some of you are familiar with this concept, and I'll close out with it. You have dependence, you have independence, and the highest level of maturity is called interdependence. What is dependence? Dependence is self-explanatory. When I'm born, I am dependent on my parents for a certain number of years. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes this in the Quran. He says, Allahu alladhi khalaqakum min dha'f. That God created you from weakness, physical weakness. ثُمَّ جَعَلَ مِن بَعْدِ ضَعْفٍ قُوَّةٍ. After weakness, you were given strength. ثُمَّ جَعَلَ مِن بَعْدِ قُوَّةٍ ضَعْفًا وَشَيْبًا. And after strength, you decline again. You're on the descent, and you are brought back to weakness. So you have a sense of dependency when you're born. Then the next level is independence. And the challenge with society is most people get stuck at the level of independence. And they don't move beyond independence to the level of interdependence, which is what we should shoot for. See, independence says, you hear about that. I'm strong, I'm independent, I don't need anybody, I can do bad all by myself, I can figure out this world all by myself. And when you think about relationships, the challenge is that if you were to equate a number or assign a number to independence, it wouldn't be 2, it would be 1. And that doesn't really jive well in a relationship because a relationship includes 2 people. It's not 1 person. So, beyond independence is interdependence. And interdependence is when we can depend on another person, however, we don't depend on another person for all of our needs. See, as human beings, we can never be fully independent. Why? Because even if you don't have people in your life, even if you behave in a way where you push people away, you are still dependent, whether you realize it or not, on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So a human being can never truly be independent. However, we can achieve interdependence. And interdependence is when we have enough security that we can live harmoniously with other people. And that's the height of relational maturity. I mention this because the way that wisdom is imparted and knowledge and character is imparted from one generation to another generation is through interdependence. when you realize that, yes, I am strong, I am sufficient, but at the same time, I am in need of others to impart wisdom upon me. So, we live in a state of, sometimes if you watch the news, you think the world is going to hell in a handbasket. And if that is creating personal anxiety in you, then I would personally recommend just pull the plug. Don't watch it if it's creating too much anxiety in you. But we live in a world, regardless, that we are in need. People are searching for the truth. People are searching for wisdom. And the madhab of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, we have it right in front of us. Friday is a very blessed day, brothers and sisters. It is a day of forgiveness. It is a day which we turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we proclaim our need, our faqr. And it's the highlight of our week because it is the day that we dedicate and in which we honor the 12th Imam, Al-Imam Al-Hujjah, Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Al-Sharif. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten his reappearance. I want to share with you a couple of words from Dua al-Ahd, which is such a powerful supplication. It is the supplication of allegiance. And if you can recite this or listen to it every day, then do so. If not, at least on a Friday, at least once a week, because it's the day that's dedicated to him. And in the end of that, we recite, Allahumma kshif hadhihi al-ghummata an hadhihi al-ummah. O Allah, reveal, remove the distress, the melancholy, the sorrow, the anguish, the grief. Allahumma kshif hadhihi al-ghummata an hadhihi al-ummata bidhuhurih. By means of his reappearance. وَعَجِّلْ لَنَا ظُهُورَهُ. O Allah, hasten his reappearance so that you remove the afflictions and sorrow from this nation. إِنَّهُمْ يَرَوْنَهُ بَعِيدًا وَنَرَاهُ قَرِيبًا. That they, the vast majority of people, they perceive it to be far. And this is a verse from the Quran. إِنَّهُمْ يَرَوْنَهُ بَعِيدًا وَنَرَاهُ قَرِيبًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that you perceive things to be far, but we, because of insight, because God is alimul ghaib, the knower of the unseen, and has introspection and sees things as they are. إِنَّهُمْ يَرَوْنَهُ بَعِيدًا وَنَرَاهُ قَرِيبًا. We see it as something which is very imminent and close. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to count us among the followers of our 12th Imam. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر وصلوا على محمد وآل محمد.